Hey, what's up, everybody? Back at it again. So today we're gonna go ahead and go over some big news that dropped recently. Actually, it dropped on Friday, last Friday, that RFK Jr. just dropped out of the presidential general election, and that he went ahead and endorsed Donald Trump. Now we're gonna go ahead and go over the speech he gave prior to the rally in Arizona, because he then went on to join Trump in his rally in Arizona to go ahead and fortify that he is in fact, endorsing Trump, and Trump had some words for him as well. And then on top of that, just dropping today is that another former Democrat went ahead and endorsed Trump also. So we'll get to that later on as well. So let's go ahead and get to it. Before we get started, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, so whenever I go live again, you will be notified. All right, then let's go ahead and go here. We got Alex Jones over here on X. Powerful words of unity from RFK Jr. We choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. We will make Americans healthy again. President Trump says this will be his legacy. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this. See what you guys say.
Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
I gotta say, yeah, the love our kids more than we hate each other, because it all starts in the household. I mean, the best governing bodies in the world that actually want to govern wholeheartedly and have general well-being for their people, it all starts in the home, which is to say the nuclear family. If you run a good nuclear family, then you're going to be able to govern in a wider sense, or you're going to be in a better position to govern in a wider sense over more people. But if you don't have a good nuclear home, then more than likely you're going to think of a globalist point of view, more of a communitarian point of view, which is what a lot of women like to do. And the only problem with that is that when you try to have a quality of outcome, you leave everything scarce. And what I mean by that is a good example, or just a plain example of that would be, okay, so we want everybody to have a steak dinner because everybody likes steak. Okay, you want that, that's fine. But we have, like, I don't know, a couple million people in the country, a couple 100 million. So I don't think we have a couple 100 million steaks just at the ready every meal or every night for dinner or anything. And so it's like, okay, well, we have shortages. So who's going to get steak? Are we going to go ahead and, lottery it off? Only this part of the country gets steak on Wednesdays. This part gets steaks on Tuesdays, Mondays, and, what have you. It's just that there's never enough to go around at any particular point in time. And let's say there is even enough to go around at that one point, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So then you're going to have shortages. People are going to get upset. Then you're going to have to start rationing it off. And then who do you ration it to? Who deserves it more? And then that's going to cause a lot of upheaval. So, like, government intervention in this type of aspect never really works out, because it's always going to ruffle a lot of feathers depending on who you give the rations to, because there's never going to be enough for everybody. Even though, a lot of politicians say to differ that we do have enough for everybody, we really don't. That's why we constantly keep importing goods from other countries, because if we did have everything, we wouldn't need to do that, obviously. So let's go ahead and keep going. But the main point of that is that it all starts in the household. If you have a good governing household, then you're going to be successful outside the household. But if you don't have a good governing household, then you're setting yourself up for disaster.
The chronic disease crisis was one of the primary reasons for my running for president, along with ending censorship in the Ukraine war. It's the reason I've made the heart-wrenching decision to suspend my campaign and to support President Trump. His decision is...
Yeah, there is a huge epidemic when it comes to diseases within the United States. I mean, if you look back in history, even going back to the 1950s and 60s, there was a lot less terminal cases than there are today, and a lot less, asthma, diabetes, heart disease, all that stuff back then. And you have to think, well, like, why is it popping up now? And a part of it's got to be the food, air quality, that type of stuff. Um, what like the things that we indulge in, like smoking, that those things. Like, not all of it is like, oh, it's only this and then that's it. No, it's all a contributing factor to our way of life. And so our way of life is literally, making us vulnerable to either genetic disorders or outside pathogens and things of that sort. And so, yeah, our way of life is just not optimal at the moment in order to not get sick and not suffer. Because right now, a lot of people are suffering needlessly. And the pharmaceutical companies are taking advantage of this by seeing people's paranoia and, coming out with new drugs every so often. And they're pushing them pretty hard, especially in the media. And damn, man, have you ever seen some of these commercials for some of these drugs? It's freaking crazy. Some of these drugs are like, you'll hear like the good part of it. Oh, if you have chronic anxiety or like, you have depression or stuff like that, just take this and then you'll be able to go out again and live again and be happy again. And then you hear like that fast talk at the end of the video. Oh, this, drug may, induce paranoia, schizophrenia, thoughts of suicide, may cause blood clots. If you feel like you have a blood clot, please contact your doctor right away. Please don't take this. If you're on any blood thinners or stuff, things of that sort. And they have like a whole list of like possible deadly uh deadly connections if you take it with other meds or if you eat it with certain foods and stuff. So there's just a lot of downfalls with a lot of these drugs that they promote through the media, and a lot of people don't pay attention to it or they just disregard it because they're like, I just feel so bad, I just want it to go away, so I'm willing to take a pill. When some of the times they're not really addressing the main source of their misery, which some of it is social, but a few of it could be genetics. But yeah, there's just way too many people on drugs right now. Way too many. I have like a theory that if the pharmaceuticals were to disappear tomorrow, that I would say, to me anyway, I would say about 50% of people would be dead within a month. Yeah, 50% be dead within the month. A lot of people are hanging on just because of pharmaceuticals. All right, let's keep going.
It's agonizing for me.
Oh yeah, one last thing. In terms of the pharmaceutical company taking advantage of people, I mean, we all saw that during COVID. Everybody freaked out. Everybody wanted the jab, even though it's an experimental drug. They weren't saying the truth about it. The info is all out now. You can go take a look. It wasn't really a viable option in terms of benefits and downfalls and things of that sort. They had a lot more downfalls than it had benefits. It doesn't guarantee immunity. It doesn't even treat the virus. All it's designed to do is block it. That's it. But they never said that. All they said is like, well, if you get it, you'll never get COVID. That didn't work. If you get it, you won't go to the hospital. That didn't work. If you get it, you don't die. That didn't work. So yeah, we got to get off pharmaceuticals, man, as a country, or at least as minimally as possible.
Because of the difficulties it causes my wife and my children and my friends. But I have the certainty that this is what I've meant to do. And that certainty gives me internal peace, even in storms. If I'm given the chance to fix the chronic disease crisis and reform our food production, I promise that within 2 years, we will watch chronic disease burden lift dramatically. We will make Americans healthy again. Within 4 years, America will be a healthy country. We will be stronger, more resilient, more optimistic, and happier. I won't.
I wonder if Trump's going to go ahead and give him an administration position within his cabinet, either in terms of because a lot of people are speculating that RFK might actually be in charge of some of the three acronym agencies like the FBI, CIA, things of that sort. But in some sense, he might also be put in position of the agricultural, part of the agency to where he oversees the food production and regulations in terms of the food supply. So who knows? He might put him there too because he seems interested in either one. And like I said before, there's a huge epidemic in obesity in the United States. So much so that like, damn, we're like, if we get caught flat-footed, we might not be able to fight back because we're not gonna have the energy to do it, or the physical ability to do it. So, yeah, we're indulging way too much, and I'm guilty of that myself. So, yeah, we'll see where that goes from there. Maybe we'll see what happens. If Trump does win and he does get a cabinet position, we'll see where he puts him.
Won't fail in doing this. Ultimately, the future, however it happens, is in God's hands and in the hands of the American voters and those of President Trump. If President Trump is elected and honors his word, the vast burden of chronic disease that now demoralizes and bankrupts the country will disappear. This is a spiritual journey for me. I reached my decision through deep prayer, through hard-nosed logic, and I asked myself, what choices must I make to maximize my chances to save America's children and restore national health?
And that's another thing. Like, religion in the past couple of decades has really taken a nosedive in the eyes of the American people. Like, everyone's like a quiet Christian now. You don't really hear it, pretty much full blown. And if anybody does mention it, it's always like brushed off, like, oh, there's those that are another religious nut and everything like that. I mean, I was one of those people too, to where it's like, oh, Jehovah's Witness at the door. Oh crap, I'm not here. I'm not here. Or like, you don't even want to meet with them. You just wish that they go away. And anytime somebody said, God bless you and stuff like that, you have some people scoff at that, like, oh, I don't want to hear anything having to do with religion. A lot of people have really mixed feelings or really strong feelings against it. But in fact, like, I've just been going to church lately and like reading up on the Bible and some of the stories and talking to some people that, damn, man, like, the more and more I look around, the more I'm seeing the connected dots and like the truth of how to live a morally good and clean life always reverts back to the Jesus and the Bible. Well, at least from my point of view. And so that's why I started diving more deep into it. But I mean, if people were to go more towards God and more towards Jesus, then it could, like, turn the country around in a more positive sense. Because if you look through the like basic blueprint of the Bible, it's like, love each other as if you were family. Like, you love God first, you love Jesus first, and then you love your neighbor as if they were family. And if a lot of people had that mentality, I mean, there's a bunch of like, different instances of what you can do in certain situations when it comes to family. And not all families get along and families betray each other, so it's never going to be clean. But overall, it could be a better way of looking at each other.
I felt that if I refused this opportunity, I would not be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that I could have saved lives of countless children and reversed this country's chronic disease epidemic. I'm 70 years old. I may have a decade to be effective. I can't imagine that President Harris would allow me or anyone to solve these dire problems. After 8 years.
Well, that was a slip up. She's not president. But that's how everyone's treating her now. Like, where is Biden? Where is Joe Biden? Guy's on vacation here in California. I'm not even sure where, but he's on vacation here in California. After the DNC, he took off. And it was so funny because his speech at the DNC, towards the end of it, he was saying, oh, I'm gonna do whatever I can. I'm gonna be step in step with Kamala and support her however I can. And right after that speech, he took off on vacation to California. So he's not with her on the beat right now. He's not with her on the campaign trail. He's relaxing. So I just thought that was funny.
President Harris, any opportunity for me to fix the problem will be out of my reach forever. President Trump has.
And the other thing is that everyone is treating Harris like if she's the president already, And the only problem with that is that, okay, so you have 3 months between here a little less than 3 months between here and the election, and you're making all these promises to your constituents. If you're going to act like the president, then what are you going to do it for them now? That's a lot of points that a lot of the Republican side and the conservative side is making now. I'm like, you're in a position of power right now. It makes sense for you to try to push things through right now. Why aren't you doing it? If you did it, it'd probably help your campaign more. So, like, to me, it seems kind of fishy why she wouldn't start implementing things now when she has the power to do so. You got 3 months, girl.
Told me that he wants this to be his legacy. I'm choosing to believe that this time he will follow through. His son, his biggest donors, his closest friends, and all support this objective. My joining the Trump campaign will be a difficult sacrifice for my wife and children, but worthwhile if there's even a small chance of saving these kids. Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
Another good point. Yeah, he made it. He made it again, but it bears repeating. Love your kids more than you hate each other, and yeah, nothing's ever going to get solved between the two parties if we constantly just lambast each other and insult each other and put each other down. We have to go ahead and reach across the aisle and like you'd be like, hey, olive branch, let's talk this through. And I thought about this last night to where I was like, are we really enemies? Are all the constituents really enemies? I mean, we are the people. We're the ones that are living under all this policy, and then the higher ups, the ones that are elected, are the ones making it. So they can go ahead and go full dictatorship mode and do whatever the hell they want, and we just have to obey. Well, not so much in the United States because we still have guns. Thank you. Second Amendment. But if Kamala gets her way and Tim Walz gets her way, they might, take that away, even though the Supreme Court would never allow it. But I was thinking that, yeah, why don't both sides get together? Because I saw an interview with TYT and Charlie Kirk, and they were, having a pretty good conversation about some of the major issues within the country and what they wanted to see come out of it. And one of the issues was the housing costs. It's like, okay, Kamala Harris, put out a plan to where she was going to give everybody $25,000 as a down payment to new houses. The only problem with that is that any new person that comes along and tries to get a home for $25,000, that's going to be a huge uptick in property sales. But the problem is that that's only going to increase costs more because that's going to cause inflation with all this new demand for home ownership. Not only all these homes are going to get built, she claimed that she wanted to do 3 million homes more within the United States so people could start buying them up. Well, that's going to be a lot of, purchasing of all of these raw materials. And what's going to happen with the purchasing of all these raw materials is that all of these companies owning those materials are going to see the uptick in demand, and so they're going to higher the prices so they can get the best profit. And so that's going to higher inflation even more, and that's going to cause costs to go up even more. And then even after that, what will happen is that all these people that are buying up homes that don't have the means to go ahead and pay off these loans, what will happen is that they're going to fall back on their loans, not be able to pay them off. The house is going to go into foreclosure, and then all that borrowed money is going to essentially disappear. The banks are going to run out of money soon. Anybody that had money in that particular bank is going to be bankrupt, or they're going to their money's gone. And so you're going to have a crash like back in 2008 during the housing crisis, or the real estate crisis, I should say. And so, yeah, it'll be something akin to that or even worse with all this, manufactured demand for homes. I mean, there is a demand for homes, but nobody can afford it. So there isn't really a demand for homes when you go in terms of the market, the wave of the market. So, yeah, I just don't think it's going to be a good idea in order to go ahead and stir up the economy by trying to institute some type of incentive to buy a home, because right now nobody can afford it. And they're not even addressing the major issue is that you want to lower prices of homes and the interest rates of these homes, not give everybody free money so they can go and try to buy a home at the outrageous prices right now and the higher interest rates. Later on, they're just going to get killed.
That's why I launched my campaign to unify America. My dad and uncle made such an enduring mark on the character of our nation, not so much because of any particular policies that they promoted, but because they were able to inspire profound love for our country and to fortify our sense of ourselves as a national community held together by ideals. They were able to put their love into the intentions and hearts of ordinary Americans and to unify a national populist movement of Americans, blacks and whites, Hispanics, urban and rural Americans. They inspired affection and love and high hopes and a culture of kindness that continue to radiate among Americans from their memory. That's the spirit on which I ran my campaign and that I intend to bring into the campaign of President Trump. Instead of vitriol and polarization, I will appeal to the values that unite us, the goals that we could achieve if only we weren't at each other's throats. The most unifying theme for all Americans is that we all love our children. If we all unite around that issue now, we can finally give them the protection, the health, and the future that they deserve.
I can get behind that. I'm sure a lot of people can get behind that. The only issue I can see with that is that a lot of people have their own notion of how to raise kids, and some people are like, carrot before the stick. Some people are stick before the carrot, and then there's a whole varied multitude of people that have a bunch of different ways of doing it in between. But at least they'll bring it to bring everybody to the table. If they can unite under the notion of trying to raise kids, then that'll bring a lot of people to the table. But then that also brings up the notion of, okay, what if the people that don't have kids? There's this huge push for the the cat ladies out there, people that don't have kids. I mean, like, you think of all the men, all the women that don't have kids. There's this good popular article, probably like a year ago. It became very popular, released by one of the big corporations, called "The Rise of the She-Economy." And the basic premise of the article was saying that by the year 2030, about 45% of women were going to be childless and husbandless by the time they were around 30 to 45 years old. And so, like, we're already seeing huge declines in the birthing rates. I mean, the death rate has already went above the birthing rate. So it means that Americans are dying right now. Like, our country is literally dying, and we're not having enough children in order to go ahead and replenish our losses in terms of life. And so America is literally dying at the moment. So the kind of the political jargon that's going around is like the comments of J.D. Vance. The childless ladies don't really care about the future of America because they have no stake in it. And then you have the childless cat ladies on the other side saying, hey, we do care about the country. How dare you say that? How dare you hurt my feelings towards that? But the thing is that when you do have kids, your politics do change. Charlie Kirk, talked to Cenk Uygur and tried to bring this to light. But Cenk Uygur was under the impression, like, no, my politics never change. When I became a dad, they never change. They're always the same. But unfortunately for Cenk, even if he doesn't realize it or not, they do change. Because within your own neighborhood, if there's child predators living in your neighborhood, you're going to want to protect them from them. So some policies are put in place in order to go ahead and make sure they stay the fuck away from kids and kids' playgrounds and schools and things of that sort. So policies are put in place to protect kids in that way. And, I'm sure that he would be in agreement of that. And so that would be one of the changes that would be made in a neighborhood that didn't have it. So policies do change depending on if you have kids or not. All right. We're done with this one. Let's go to this one. CNN cut away from RFK's speech as he was explaining how the DNC rigged the primary to replace their candidate with one who didn't receive a single vote, and how the media covered it up and censored him. Yeah, man. Before we go into it, I had heard, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I had heard that the DNC and the Democrats as a whole went ahead and, passed by a few primaries because they didn't want RFK even on the ticket. They didn't want him on the ticket. And they put up all these new regulations in regards to being able to be put on the primary ticket, so he wouldn't be able to go ahead and people to be able to cast votes for him. Or so like he wouldn't be able to get, electors to go ahead and be in his favor. And so that's how Joe Biden presumably won in a landslide, and that's why he was a presumptive nominee all the way up to like a month ago when he dropped out because of that horrible debate against Trump. And then Kamala was installed. She wasn't voted in. She was installed in, because if you go back and look at those primaries, Kamala Harris was never on the ticket, ever. It wasn't Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. No, it was just Joe Biden. And a lot of people would think like, well, she's the vice president. It's assumed that she's there with him. That's not how it works, unfortunately. And then the other argument that people will make is that, well, Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris, so it only makes sense that she's the vice president and Joe Biden steps down, that she would be the next in line. The only problem is that the DNC doesn't make that decision. They don't have the power to make that decision. Just because, the president decides not to get reelected, it doesn't give them the, carte blanche to go ahead and install their own candidate. They have to have an emergency primary or an open convention at the DNC convention. But they didn't do that. What they essentially did was like, okay, we want this girl now. We're going to put her in, throw everything behind her. All the delegates get behind her, fall in line. And everyone associated with the Democrat Party was just like, okay, we elected them to be our representatives. We think they know best. So if they're choosing Kamala Harris, I'm all on board. The only problem is that that's not how it should work. Once one candidate drops out, a primary should be taking place so that the people can decide who they want to represent them. In this instance, that didn't happen, and the Democrats chose who's going to represent you. You didn't choose, they chose for you. And that could lead to a lot of bad things in the future if the people are going to allow this to happen. So let's move on to the next one. Let's hear RFK talk about the rigged election.
At the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020.
That is true. That is true. If anybody goes back and looks at the 2020 general election, Kamala Harris was amongst like a dozen of Democrats that was trying to vie for the job to get the delegates in the primaries. And before the first primary even took place, Kamala Harris dropped out because it showed in the polls that she was doing so bad that she wasn't going to win even one delegate in the first state. And so she dropped out right before the election took place. And she wasn't even on the ticket because of that. That's how unpopular she was back in 2020. And then at the end of 2020, Joe Biden chose her to be her vice president for whatever reason, the Republicans or the Democrats think. But the thing is that she was never chosen. She was never chosen by the people. She was chosen by Biden, but she was never voted in. And so that's where the Republicans are talking about now. She was never chosen by the people. She was chosen by the Democrat elite. And even though a lot of Democrats are like, well, we chose them to be our representatives, so we trust their judgment so they can choose. Unfortunately, that's not how that works, like I said before. Anytime somebody is to be elected to a position, they have to be just that, elected to the position. Even to have the ability to be elected to the position, they have to be elected first. So in a general election, in order to be the nominee, you have to have the delegates. In order to get the delegates, you need the votes from the people so the delegates know where to go. That didn't happen.
Without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe to toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days.
We've been listening to independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from
They cut him off. Didn't even let him go on a minute. Oh, that's sad.
Phoenix, outlining what led him to his quixotic quest for the White House to now dropping out. And
yeah, they didn't want that. They didn't want their constituents to know that part. Even though he kind of got the gist of it, they didn't want him to go on. To go ahead, he's probably going to get more in detail with it in his speech, and we'll go ahead and see if that's the case later on. But yeah, that makes sense that CNN wouldn't want that being known to their base and their viewership, that Harris was never elected. They just installed her. Because the whole thing of the Democrat Party, their biggest selling point is that, hey, we need to save democracy because Trump is threatening democracy. And if anybody doesn't know democracy, let's look this up real quick. Let's look up the word democracy. Because a lot of people throw around words and they don't even know what they mean. So, democracy, a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. Let's see, a state governed by a democracy and the control of an organization or group by majority of its members. Let's see if it gives me a more detailed description. Yeah, so typically through elected representatives. So that's basically it. Is democracy is a governing body of all eligible representatives of elected representatives, I should say. And so you have to be elected first, and Kamala Harris wasn't. So now we all know what democracy means. And this is where, in his speech, he goes out and endorses Trump, even though you kind of heard that in the first video, where he's talking about, what he hopes to achieve through endorsing Trump, and maybe if he's put into a position in Trump's cabinet or administration. So let's hear his actual words, because, we all hear rumors all the time, and we don't always know what they mean, and they could be false. So let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
Principal causes that persuaded me to leave the Democratic Party and run as an independent, and now to throw my support to President Trump. The causes were free speech, a war in Ukraine, and the war on our children. Three great.
That was really low. He was talking really away from the mic. I don't think it's my audio. Because in the first couple of videos, it was going well. But yeah, you heard it there that he's officially endorsing Trump right from his own mouth, and a few reasons that he gave for it. Now, this is the whole speech right here. I don't want to go ahead and get into the whole thing because freaking YouTube will try to kill me in terms of my channel. They already tried to do it once already when I tried to look at Kamala Harris's speech. I played through the whole thing, and they tried to give me a strike for it. So we're just gonna chop through here and see what he has to say.
Of civil rights,
in some points.
The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working.
Building your online
man.
business? Go to Wix.com and set up
working
don't.
class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had.
And that's what it was back in the day, like in the 1960s and 70s. That's what it was. It was the Democrat of rebels, against the big government. It was against, big corporations. It was against, totalitarianism, that type of thing. But nowadays, that's their face. Even though that they espouse that they're all against those things, their actions speak differently. I mean, big government, that's who they are now. They are the big government. They've taken over the big government. And now they're the ones instituting laws that either suppress, punish, or, blacklist anybody that doesn't agree with them. I mean, you take a look at the 2020 election. After that, a bunch of people were censored by even questioning whether the election was legitimate or not, or if there was foul play or some errors taking place. They censored everybody across all platforms, and that was Zuckerberg just came out recently and said, "Yeah, definitely. Like we were pressured by the White House in order to go ahead and shut these narratives down, and so we did it because we didn't want to, lose our money making ways." And so, yeah, that's totally against the First Amendment of the United States. And with the whole COVID thing, they did the same thing. They either fired you, they blacklisted you, they shut you up on social media. Anybody that said anything to question the vaccine was basically, blackballed and, blacklisted, and pretty much said that they were misinformationalists and then they needed to be silenced, and they were hurting people by spreading this information. They went so far as to say that they were going to go ahead and create a new branch of government, which is the Department of Misinformation, 1984, the Department of Truth and stuff like that. They almost got away with that shit, but then they got criticized and lambasted into the freaking ground. And like that was dead on arrival when that was when Joe Biden said that was going to be a thing. Yeah, no. The country was not going to put up with that shit. None whatsoever. But yeah, the Democrat Party has definitely become the thing that they hate, or that they used to hate. And that's why a lot of Democrats, just like RFK Jr., just like Tulsi Gabbard, they're leaving the party. Even some Democrats in Texas and in California are switching parties because they can't recognize their own party anymore. They're not who they were previously. They're saying one thing, but they're doing another. You know what I mean? It's like, I love you, but I'm also, trying to actively end you with whatever weapon, or with myself, or whatever. It just doesn't make sense. So a lot of people are waking up to this notion.
Departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision. Conventional wisdom said that it would be impossible even to get on the ballot as an independent because each state poses an insurmountable tangle of arbitrary rules for collecting signatures. I would need over 1 million signatures, something no presidential candidate in history had ever achieved.
Yeah, so these are the rules I was talking about on trying to keep them out of the primary ticket or on the ballots. And so what he's talking about is basically that they tried to institute a lot of, roundabout rules in order to even keep him off there, because they wanted Biden pretty much to win all the delegates in the primaries unopposed. And that's what he's talking about now. All right, let's move forward a few minutes and let's see what he's
Wow,
talking about
I just
then.
built the most amazing workflow on Monday.com.
Yay.
You build your own workflow? Why? There are
neglect
Let's see what he's talking about here.
and of official and institutional corruption. Today, I'm here to tell you that I will not allow your efforts to go to waste. I'm here to tell you that I will leverage your tremendous accomplishments to serve the ideals that we share, the ideals of peace, of prosperity, of freedom, of health, all the ideals that motivated my campaign. I'm here today to describe the path forward that you have opened with your commitment.
Okay. All right. So he's basically saying what he's going to do in the speech. Let's move a little bit forward. Let's go to 15. Let's see what he's saying here.
Democracy. It also, the media justifies their censorship on the grounds of combating misinformation. But governments and oppressors don't censor lies. They don't fear lies. They fear the truth. And that's what they censor.
That's exactly right. I mean, you saw it all over with 2020 election. You saw it all over with COVID. How they were censoring like literal doctors. They were censoring doctors, and they would fire anybody that spoke out against it or wouldn't accept the vaccine, and that was their way of weeding out their opposition. I mean, if you think about it from a pure, my blue team and red team, right? And you're on the blue team, and you're like, okay, I don't know who is blue and who is red within this organization. How do I weed them out? Okay, so the red hates this thing, this quote unquote vaccine. How do I weed them out? Okay, let's make it mandatory, and whoever doesn't get it, we fire them. So now, like, only our side controls the organization. All right, good. That's a good way of doing it. Because now, like, the red is obviously not going to go along with the mandate. They're going to hate it. They're probably going to be outspoken about it. And then, boom, you identify them, you get rid of them, and now you control the organization. I mean, that's strictly from, blue against red team standpoint. I'm not sure if that's exactly was their game plan, but based on the results and based off of everything that happened, it kind of seems like that was the way that they were going. Because a lot of people lost their jobs, man. Not only doctors and lawyers, nurses, a lot of emergency workers, some people in colleges and stuff like that. The colleges mandated it. A lot of businesses mandated it. And so a lot of people lost their jobs. I would say a fair amount of people lost their jobs because of that mandate of the quote-unquote vaccine. And, I mean, the left is constantly talking about how women should be unoppressed to abortion because my body, my choice, right? Well, that type of philosophy also should apply to getting a vaccine. My body, my choice. I don't want that in my body, so it's my choice. But the government said, no. This is for safety. And because it's for safety, you do what we say. I don't care if it's the same, ideology as the abortion thing. You're going to do what we say or else. And so it's just not logically consistent. That's what it is.
And I don't want any of this to sound like a personal complaint, because it's not. For me, it's all part of a journey, and it's a journey that I signed up with. But I need to make these observations because I think they're critical for us doing the thing that we need to do as citizens in a democracy to assess where we are in this country and what our democracy still looks like, and the assumptions about U.S. leadership around the globe. And are we living up? Are we really still a role model for democracy in this country? Or have we made it, a kind of a joke?
It's definitely a joke now. It's definitely a joke now. A lot of people are turning a blind eye to it, but unfortunately, democracy is dead. At least on the Democrat side, it's dead. I'm not sure if they're going to try to revive it, because at the moment it's dead. The moment that they decide to forego an emergency primary or have an open DNC to where candidates can present their case and the delegates can choose, they killed it. as soon as they installed Kamala Harris artificially, they killed it. Now, if they're going to bring it back, in the midterms, we'll see. They might just push it forward because obviously this could have been a trial run to like further, elections coming up. And who knows if they, forego a lot of primaries and a lot of elections just to be like, well, we know what's best for you. Our constituents, our base knows that we love them. We know they know that we know what's best for them. So, they'll just let us choose. We'll see where it goes from here, man. I hope that's not the case because you're going to see a lot of abuse of power from that.
Here's the good news.
Here are, in my opinion,
Oh my God.
3 of the worst ways to invest in.
While mainstream outlets denied me a critical platform, they didn't shut down my ideas, which have especially flourished among young voters and independent voters, thanks to the alternative media. Many months ago, I promised the American people that I would withdraw from the race if I became a spoiler. A spoiler is someone who will alter the outcome of the election but has no chance of winning. In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless systematic censorship and media control.
And anybody that thinks of this objectively, you have to admit that the Democrats have a total stranglehold on the mainstream media. They have a total stranglehold on it. If you look at any of the mainstream media outlets, you cannot say that they are unbiased at all. At all. If you know anything about journalism, it's that it's supposed to be unbiased. It's just supposed to be the facts. Here's the data. You decide how you think. But that's not how the media is run nowadays. They all have their opinions. They all have their opinion pieces. They're constantly lambasting the people they don't like. They're constantly giving their own personal anecdotals when it comes to the information that's being shared, and that should never be the function of the media. The media should just be giving you the news as is, and that's it. They should never give in their 2 cents about it. That's not what the media is for. But that's not what we have now. That is not what we have now. A lot of people think that Germany was the worst abusers of their own media towards their people because at least the idea of it was that they totally cut out the rest of the world and they only told their people what they wanted to know, in order to go ahead and control them. Well, that's what we're seeing now. That is what we're seeing now. The mainstream media is not sharing anything that goes against the party of their choosing. They only show what's favorable. Sometimes they throw stuff in there because, they're not all the way, Germany style. They're not all the way there, but it's getting damn close to where they do say some stuff that literally cannot be hidden. I do not give them much credit for that because they literally can't hide it. And if they were to hide it completely, people would know they were frauds and that they weren't objective. So in some sense, they are trying to give a little leeway with the truth, but in a way that won't harm their political ideology.
So I cannot in good conscience ask my staff and volunteers to keep working their long hours or ask my donors to keep giving when I cannot honestly tell them that I have a real path to the White House. Furthermore, our polling consistently showed that by staying on the ballot in the battleground states, I would likely hand the election over to the Democrats with whom I disagree on the most existential issues.
And that's the other thing. Now that RFK dropped out, a lot of people are saying that, Trump essentially won, especially in the battleground states, because a lot of the independents would never go Democrat, especially the way that they're, campaigning right now. They would go Trump. But because, RFK's in there, they would rather vote for him. And so he's absolutely right. He was polling anywhere from 3 to 5% in most of the battleground states. And everywhere else, he was polling even lower. So even if half of that were to go to Trump, because mostly none of them are going to be going for the Democrats. At least I don't think so. They would be going more for Trump. And so if Trump even gets like a 1.5 to 3 to 5 points in the battleground states, this election is essentially over. And a lot of people are like, no, RFK didn't really matter. He has no real stake in the game, and nothing's really going to change much. Well, we're going to see in the next few weeks how the polls swing. And I would almost guarantee that Trump is going to go up a few points. We'll see.
Censorship, war, and chronic disease. Oh, I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name my name will remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or
And that was the other thing. I heard that like he's only taking his ticket off in the battleground states. Everywhere else, he's keeping it on. So that's interesting because I think he's trying to harm the Democrats in that aspect. So any Democrat that is like, flip-flopping between Republican and Democrat, that they hate Trump, but they don't like Kamala, well, the middle ground would be, RFK. So like he might take votes away from Kamala that way. But in the battleground states, he's taking it completely off. That's why anybody that's, in between Trump and RFK, now that RFK is gone, all that is left is Trump. So it's actually a pretty good strategy.
or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I encourage you to vote for me. And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible. In fact, today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269. And I could conceivably still end up in the White House in a contingent election. But
I'm sorry, that was too funny. One guy, woo! Oh, you lone warrior, dude. Yeah, keep up your support, man. Stick it to the man.
in about 10 battleground states.
All right, let's move forward a little bit. Let's go to 25. See what he's talking about here. Come on, man.
So this is
These
remarkable.
commercials are killing me.
The paper tablet created for people who like to take notes. It even feels...
At the FDA, the NIH, the HHS, and the USDA that has caused the epidemic. Callie had been working on and off for my campaign, advising me on those subjects since the beginning. And those subjects have been my primary focus for the last 20 years. I was delighted when Callie told me that day that he had also been advising President Trump. He told me President Trump was anxious to talk to me about chronic disease and other subjects and to explore avenues of cooperation. He asked if I would take a call from the president. President Trump telephoned me a few minutes later, and I met with him the following day.
And this is the thing. I think this is pretty huge. I think that Trump is now surrounding himself with, likable people, at least in the public eye, and people that actually have passion for, what they're going for. For RFK specifically, he's after health and wellness within the United States, and about the corruption, at least when it comes to the really shady things that surrounded his family, and the theories that our own government had something to do with the elimination of some of his family members. And that goes along with what Trump announced just days ago, that he was going to put a commission together over assassinations of public figure assassinations in the United States. And he said it was he's honoring RFK Jr. with this, but he might put him in charge of it. Who knows? And man, Trump better watch his back, man, because this is a huge threat to the establishment and the powers that be that are installed right now. Because if everybody finds out what really happened during these incidences, especially in J13 with Trump's assassination attempt, then all hell's gonna break loose, and those in power are gonna either lose it or we're gonna get into an actual conflict. So, damn, they gotta like I can only imagine how freaked out they're getting. So we'll see what happens the next couple months.
A few weeks later, I met again with President Trump and his family members and close advisors in Florida. In a series of long, intense discussions, I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. We talked about Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals. That arrangement would allow us to disagree publicly and privately and fiercely, if need be, on issues over which we differ, while working together on the existential issues upon which we are in concordance. I was a ferocious critic of many of the policies during his first administration.
And that's exactly what RFK Jr. was talking about, I believe, in the first video, is that you have to come together under mutual love of children, or basically of a common denominator, love of a common denominator. The example he gave was children, more than your vitriol for each other. And so that goes into what Trump had told him, was that we need a unity of rivals. So anybody that, that is going against each other, it kind of goes along the lines of the notion I gave about, everybody has kids, but everybody has a different teaching method of how to raise them. That's kind of the same thing when it comes to political rivals, especially within like a party of similar interests, to where they might align on the core goals of the party, but not on how to implement or to go about enforcing policy or the policy itself. So yeah, I agree with Trump on that aspect, to bring in your rivals, so you guys can come to a mutual understanding of what the goal is, and like try to come to a common denominator on how to go ahead and go about making those goals come to fruition.
And there are still issues and approaches upon which we continue to have very serious differences. We are aligned with each other on other key issues, like ending the forever wars, ending the childhood disease epidemics, securing the...
And that's what's going to get them the most heat, is ending the forever wars. Because war, if anybody knows this, if they ever studied war in the political and the financial aspect, it is a huge money gainer. Wars pump out huge profits for certain organizations. And so to disrupt that is to disrupt their cash flow. And they're not going to be all happy with that. They're going to do everything they can in order to go ahead and disrupt you from disrupting them. And we saw that on J13th, kind of, because Trump was basically telling everybody, he goes, hey, if I get into office, Ukraine and Russia, that'll be done within a day. Over there in Israel and Hamas, that'll be done within a lunch hour. He's saying he's going to end it because he doesn't want people dying. And so that is a huge threat to the military-industrial complex. And I think that is why a huge Democratic figurehead just endorsed Trump, and we're going to get to that a little later. But that's going to be huge, interesting. And so I think this guy, RFK Jr. and Trump, need to watch their back soon, because in another attempt, it may be coming soon.
Border, protecting freedom of speech, unraveling the corporate capture of our regulatory agencies, getting the U.S. intelligence agencies out of the business of propagandizing and censoring and surveilling Americans, and interfering with our elections. Following my first discussion with President Trump, I tried unsuccessfully to open similar discussions with Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris declined to meet or even to speak with me. Suspending my candidacy is a heart-rending decision for me, but
And that's a huge tell, too, that she wouldn't even come to the table with this guy. He's like, I don't want anything to do with you. I think I'm winning already. I don't need any of your ideas, because they probably don't even align with hers. Because in actuality, if you look at, you're a product of your environment for the most part. A lot of people are, especially if you like that environment and you like the way that oh my god, the philosophy is within those environments. If you look at her upbringing, she was grown up with a father that was a Marxist, a professor, and so he's very eloquent. He knows how to speak. He spoke with his daughter. So you have to think that some of that Marxism, was implemented in Kamala Harris, and it kind of went into a lot of her policies when she was a senator, because in 2019, I believe, she was voted the most left-leaning senator amongst everybody in the House of Representatives. And so it's like, whoa, even farther than Bernie Sanders, which is hard to believe. And so I would suspect that a lot of her views are definitely not shared with RFK. And so that's probably why she didn't want to meet with him, because she was like, you have nothing more to offer me, because you don't even align with my philosophy or ideals and the way I want to push forward. I mean, you look at her economic plan, that is complete Marxism, the way that she wants to go about it. And if you don't think that's dangerous, just take a look at Venezuela right now. They did the exact same thing, trying to put price caps and, price gouging, putting price locks on goods and services and things of that sort. And look where they are now. They're in a shithole.
Convinced that it's the best hope for ending the Ukraine war and ending the chronic disease epidemic that is eroding our nation's vitality from the inside, and for finally protecting free speech. I feel a moral obligation to use this opportunity to save millions of American children, above all things. In case some of you don't realize how dire the condition is of our children's health and chronic disease in general, I would urge you to view Dr. Carlson's recent interview with Callie Means and his sister, Dr. Casey Means, who is the top graduate of her class at Stanford Medical School.
This is how AI optimizes my schedule. This meeting got canceled. Hooray! We didn't really...
This is an issue that affects all of us far more directly and urgently than any culture war issue and all the other issues that we obsess on and that are tearing apart our country. This is the most important issue. Therefore, it has the potential to bring us together. So let me share a little bit about why I believe it's so urgent.
Like we were talking about earlier, man, this huge obesity epidemic. A lot more people have a lot more either genetic diseases, either brought on by the foods we eat, the substances we ingest, or the atmosphere that we live in. Way more than it was back in the 1950s and 60s. And it's not all about climate change. I know a lot of people want to blame that on it. It's not. There's probably multiple factors that go into why we are where we are. A lot of it has to do with psychological too. And so we just got to do better as a society in order to go ahead and mitigate those risks as much as possible in a healthy sense, not in you do what I say or else sense.
Today, 2/3, we spend more on healthcare than any country on earth, twice what they pay in Europe. And yet we have the worst health outcomes of any nation in the world. We're about 79th in health outcomes behind Costa Rica and Nicaragua and Mongolia and other countries. Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. And
that's because we're stubborn too, I have to say. I mean, you tell like people that are on dialysis or on diabetes medication or on insulin, that type of stuff. It's like, well, if you stop smoking or if you stop eating sugars, fatty, or cholesterol, with eating a bunch of junk, diabetes, eating too much candy or drinking too much soda and things of that sort, raising your blood sugar. Why don't you just stop doing that? And then the problem's gonna go away. But unfortunately, with us, with America, we just have an abundance of shitty foods and shitty substances that end up hurting us in the long run, and we don't want to listen. We're just like, yeah, whatever. It won't happen to me, and if it does happen to me, oh well, I'm too far gone anyway. That type of mentality.
COVID epidemic, we had the highest body count of any country in the world. We had 16% of the COVID deaths, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. And CDC says that's because we are the sickest people on earth. We have the highest chronic disease rate on earth. And
Well, I think those numbers are inflated, by the way. I think a lot of those numbers are inflated because they were. I saw reports from hospitals that anybody that came in with COVID had to be registered as a COVID patient. So even if they came in with COVID, but they were there for another reason, if they were to die, then that would be labeled as a COVID death, even if it wasn't COVID that actually directly killed them. Let's say they came in for a motorcycle accident and they just so happen to have COVID, they're listed as a COVID patient, but if they die from the injuries from the accident, then it's considered a COVID death. If you don't believe me, look it up, man. There's a bunch of stories like that.
The average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. So these were people who had immune system collapse.
And I always said it too in the beginning. I mean, you can't find these videos now because they've been like obliterated from YouTube. From my other channel, I used to have another channel before this one, but I always said that COVID was basically a force multiplier. So if you were on on your last leg, COVID kicked. He was Johnny from Karate Kid. Sweep the leg, Johnny, and that's what he did.
Who had mitochondrial dysfunction, and no other country has anything like this. 2/3 of American adults and children suffer from chronic health issues. 50 years ago, that number was less than 1%. So we've gone from 1% to 66%.
That is mind blowing, man. How the hell did we get here? From 1% 50 years ago, so that was that 1970s? Now we're at 66% of chronic illnesses. That is insane, man.
In America, 74% of Americans are now overweight or obese, and 50% of our children. 120 years ago, when somebody was obese, they were sent to the circus. There were case reports done about them. Obesity was almost unknown. In Japan, the childhood obesity rate is 3% compared to 50% a year. Half of Americans have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. When my uncle was president, I was a boy. Juvenile diabetes was effectively non-existent. A typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes during his entire career, a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And
God damn, man, that is tragic. That is so tragic. 1 out of 3 kids. That is insane, man. Stop taking your damn kids to McDonald's. I told my sister this. She didn't want to listen.
mitochondrial disorder.
I'm Millie, a content creator, coach, and business owner. If I had to start my business from zero, I would have focused on...
It caused diabetes, also causing Alzheimer's, which is now classified as diabetes.
I didn't know that. Holy shit.
And it's costing this country more than our military budget every year. There's been an...
That's crazy. Our military budget, what is it? It was at 4%. I think it's jumped up since then. Maybe it's at 6%. And our and the medical expenses is above that.
Explosion of neurological illnesses that I never saw as a kid. ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, Tourette's syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, Asperger's, autism. In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500.
And a lot of these have to do with late-term pregnancies, because everybody says that when women turn 35, they're already entered in the realm of geriatric pregnancies, to where the child that's born thereafter has a very high chance of developing a neurological disorder like Down syndrome. And so with the rise of feminism in the 1970s, telling women, hey, you can go get it too. Go get a job, go get a career, put off marriage and kids until you're ready. That's going to be well into your 30s at that point. You're having kids well after that. Trying to find a mate. You know, you have your kids in the late 30s, early 40s, and now a bunch of them have these neurological disorders he's espousing. So, yeah, I'm not saying that's, you know, the get all be all of why 66% of Americans, you know, have these neurological disorders now, but I'm sure it's a proponent of it.
Now, autism rates in kids are 1 in 36, according to CDC nationally. Nobody's talking about this. 1 in every 22 kids in California has autism.
And the reason being is because pharmaceutical companies don't want people to know about this, because if they, you know, address the root cause of it and then it gets better, that's less business for them. You got to remember, the pharmaceutical company that makes all these drugs, they want you to buy them. They don't want them to, like, you know, go dusty on a shelf. So in order to, you know, get people to buy them, people have to get sick. Same thing with the medical industry. Medical industry, they don't gain money if people are healthy. If everyone's healthy, then nobody's visiting the hospital. It's a business, man. It's a business. Any business model wants to grow their business, not downsize it. And with the government, if with it constantly growing and then taxes rising up what the wazoo, you really think they want people to become healthier? Become more stable? Yeah.
And this is a crisis that 77% of our kids are too disabled to serve in the United States military. What is happening to our country? And why isn't this in the headlines every single day? There's nobody else in the world that is experiencing this. This is only happening in America.
Well, the theory behind that is that the powers outside the U.S. want the U.S. to fail wholeheartedly, but they know that they can't come in and actually attack us because we have the technology to repel them, even though we don't have the physical force anymore. And so it's way better. I mean, you think back at, you know, if you were to go into the nerd version, would be like, you know, the Avengers Age of Ultron, to where in order to get an empire to die, you don't attack the empire, because even if you destroy it, it might rise back up. What you do is you get them to crumble from within. And so to get to America, to get any nation to crumble from within, you have to destroy their faith, which is religion. You have to destroy the nuclear family, feminism. You know, incentivize women to not have husbands or to kick them out of the home. And now you have children with more likelihood of ending up on the street doing drugs, abuses, prison time, all that stuff. And then you destroy their history. And you're saying that all the time, you know, oh, the founding fathers were racist bigots, you know, the Confederate flag, we need to erase that. Offensive, you know, murals, offensive statues, we got to tear those down. We have to erase our history so we can implement the history that we like, and so we can go ahead and create. So all of history and everything that you see is just the narrative that we want. And so I'm completely convinced that the powers that be want the United States to fail and crumble from within, and they're not going to go ahead and try to, you know, force it from without.
About 18%. And by the way, you know, there has been no change in diagnosis, which the industry sometimes like to say. There has been no change in screening. This is a change in incidence. In my generation, 70-year-old men, the autism rates are about 1 in 10,000. In my kids' generation, 1 in 34. I'll repeat, in California, 1 in 22. Why are we letting this happen? Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? These are the most precious assets that we have in this country.
That's very true. The children are the future. And if we let that go, we don't have a future, especially for our nation. And yeah, I'm completely convinced. Like, I'm not completely convinced, but he's making a great case for him to be on the Trump administration, either the head of, or a higher up in the FBI or CIA, or him looking at, you know, the FDA, things of that sort, in order to go ahead and try to turn this around. Because if these numbers are true, I'll look them up. that is very, very alarming. All right, let's move forward a little bit. Let's go to 40. Let's go to 40. Let's see what you're saying here.
I don't want to live 9 to 5, paycheck to paycheck.
I wish I would have known this 20 years ago.
This is
A sick child is the best thing for the pharmaceutical industry. When American children or adults get sick with a chronic condition, they're put on medication for their entire life. Imagine what will happen when Medicare starts paying for Ozempic, which costs $1,500 a month, and it's being recommended for children as young as 6, all for a condition, obesity, that is completely preventable and barely even existed 100 years ago.
That's exactly right. I work within the pharmaceutical industry, and so I can tell you right now that he's absolutely right. Ozempic is usually prescribed for people with diabetes, but now it's being used for off-brand purposes in order to lose weight, because people ended up finding out that like it kills your appetite and it actually lowers body fat. And so a lot of people are taking it for off-brand purposes at the moment. And like the diabetic community is pissed. They are pissed because the Ozempic, manufacturers didn't know that there was going to be this big boom in demand for it. And so it's scarce right now at the moment. And so they're moving on to a bunch of different ones. Not just Ozempic. You got Mounjaro. You have, what's the other one? Mounjaro and Ozempic. You have, what's the other one? Come on. I just saw it today. Damn, I forgot what it is. But there's a bunch of different injections that are out right now that are very scarce because everybody is taking it for all these off-brand purposes in order to lose weight. And it's not just diabetes.
And 74% of Americans are obese. The cost, if all of them took their Ozempic prescription, is $3 trillion a year. This is a drug that is made by Novo Nordisk, the biggest company in Europe. It's a Danish company, and the Danish government does not recommend it. It recommends change in diet to treat obesity and exercise. And in our country, the recommendation now is for Ozempic to children at age 6. Novo Nordisk, the biggest company in Europe, and virtually its entire value is based upon its projections of what it's going to sell, of the Ozempic it's going to sell to America. And we have the food lobbyists have a bill in front of Congress today that is backed by the White House, backed by Vice President Harris and President Biden, to allow this to happen. This $3 trillion cost that is going to bankrupt our country. For a fraction of that amount, we could buy organic food for every American family, 3 meals a day, and eliminate diabetes altogether. We're going.
They would never do it. They would never do it, man, because they're definitely in cahoots with these companies, and they're like, "Hey, you give me a piece, I'll give you a piece. Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours." Yeah, they would never do it, ever. They make too much money that way. I mean, you look at every member of Congress, they're all essentially millionaires. How the hell did they become millionaires? This is a public office, like public servant. Back in the day, back in the 1940s and stuff, nobody really wanted to be a U.S. senator back then because it was seen as a public service was like, it was like what would you say, a part-time job, and then you didn't even really get paid that well for it. And like it cost you a lot of stress. Like you didn't really have any privacy. Your name was out there. You were kind of famous in a sense. People hated you depending on how your policy and viewpoints went. And so it wasn't really seen as a net positive. But nowadays, anybody that goes into Congress is seen as a way net positive now, because I mean, you look at somebody like Nancy Pelosi that's been caught numerous times with trading on insider information. And you would think that, she'd be busted down and, kicked out of Congress. But no, they actually have a rule in place to where if you get caught with insider trading, then it's only like a $1,500 fine. And you can get it infinite amount of times. And like nothing more will happen to you. It's fucking crazy, man.
We're going to bring healthy food back to school lunches. We're going to stop subsidizing the worst foods with our agricultural subsidies. We're going to get toxic chemicals out of our food. We're going to reform the entire food system. And for that, we need new leadership in Washington. because unfortunately both the Democrats and the Republican parties are in cahoots with the big food producers.
This game, you're not ready.
Big Pharma.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Everybody is in cahoots with everybody else. Like I said before, I'm completely convinced that the powers that be want America to implode from the inside, and we're seeing it happen in real time. All right, let's go ahead and move on to what else we got. It's the same thing. Okay, so here's the big news that just came out today. If you're not in the know, Tulsi Gabbard came out and endorsed President Trump. Now, some of the reports I'm seeing about this in terms of like people on X, a lot of people are saying, well, go ahead and take her. We never liked her anyway. And and this is from the Democrat side on the left. And that is true because Tulsi Gabbard, she says she went ahead and met with President Trump when he was president to try to go ahead and, like, you know, olive branch across. Hey, let's see what I can do to try to help you because I love America. I love American people. I don't care where side you're on. You're in power now. Let's see if I can get you to see my side of things. And the other side didn't like that, and they were like, no, fuck that. We, like, you know, you're a turncoat. You're a traitor. We don't like you anymore. Get the hell out of our party. And they essentially pushed her out, the Democrat, you know, in Congress. And so she went on a book tour to where she wrote a book and pretty much explaining, like, you know, what all happened to her during this time and how she was seeing as the Democrat Party became more and more totalitarian and more focused on power and keeping it rather than what was in the best interest of the people. And so just recently she came out and endorsed Trump. So that's what we're going to take a look at right now. Right here from George, breaking. The entire crowd at the National Guard Association meeting in Detroit just erupted in cheers for Tulsi Gabbard as she walked on stage to formally endorse President Donald Trump. This is massive. First, RFK Jr., and now Tulsi is joining Team Trump. We live in unprecedented times. God bless everyone who is taking the hits in order to help save America. I'm pretty sure he meant America, but, you know, we'll give it to him. All right, let's go ahead and hear this. It's only a minute clip.
Thank you.
And I'll say this. A lot of people were kind of upset at Trump's VP pick of J.D. Vance because everybody was saying, like, well, he's too much like Trump. We need somebody, you know, a little bit the mirror opposite of Trump. That's why he brings in more voters, looking at it from a strategic point of view, you know, trying to get all the swing voters and maybe even some of the Democrats that are not too sure about Kamala. But Trump was doubling down on Vance. But with RFK and Tulsi Gabbard joining the ticket, that's essentially, you know, bringing in another VP, to me anyway.
Thank you, Mr. President. Aloha.
And if he comes out in public and then says that RFK and Tulsi Gabbard are going to have cabinet positions within his administration, that will be freaking the nail in the coffin.
I know we got Hawaii in the house here. There we go. It is a privilege to be here with all of you, my brothers and sisters in uniform, especially on this day of all days. I had the privilege of joining President Trump this morning at Arlington Cemetery, where he joined two Gold Star families and loved ones of Staff Sergeant Hoover and Sergeant G, both of whom were two of the 13 killed in the Abbey Gate attack 3 years ago today in Kabul.
I cannot believe that's not a bigger story of what happened in Afghanistan. At the time, it kind of was, but they swept it under the rug. They were more talking about, oh, look at, like, the tragedy that's happening in Afghanistan from the withdrawal, you know, from all the planes, the people hanging off from the planes, from the landing gear, and then plummeting to their deaths and stuff like that. And then, like, this was completely swept under the rug at the time. I couldn't believe it. Is that Biden had, you know, after the military got attacked and 13 members died, he retaliated on who he thought was some Taliban, activists or soldiers, and he thought that he had killed, like, you know, a good dozen of them or something like that. But turned out that he sent a drone strike onto a van that they thought was how that occupied a couple of Taliban soldiers, but it turned out to be a family of 7. Ended up killing like 3 to 4 kids and the parents. Totally wiped out the whole family. And all they said was, oops, our bad, sorry. No repercussions because of it. That story was completely swept under the rug. And if you think I'm lying, go ahead and look that up. Look that up on a drone strike that President Biden bragged about at first, said that he confirmed it. He even came out in a public announcement and said, I confirmed the deaths. We got them back. We got a couple of Taliban guys, and then they had to come back later and say, oh, sorry, it wasn't actually Taliban. It was actually a family of 7, and we killed them all. What the fuck, man? And nobody spoke about it afterwards. Everybody's like totally erased it off the mainstream media. They were like, nope, can't have that shit on there. We don't want Biden looking any bad than he already does. Damn, dude. I can't believe that was swept under the rug. That was insane. But I think this is huge that she's now she's now backing President Trump. This is a different video. I think this has a little bit more context to it, so let's listen in.
Privileged to be here with all of you, my brothers and sisters in uniform, especially on this day of all days. I had the privilege of joining President Trump this morning at Arlington Cemetery, where he joined 2 Gold Star families and loved ones of Staff Sergeant Hoover and Sergeant G, both of whom were 2 of the 13 killed in the Abbey Gate attack 3 years ago today in Kabul. And I can tell you, as we were there, as he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, joining these Marines' loved ones, I felt the sorrow that he shared with them in their loss. I felt and saw his sincere appreciation for these servicemen and women who paid the ultimate price.
And it is so crazy that every time that we talk about a controversy in a political world, we always attune it to gate. We always give it that, little synonym with it. Applegate, Russiagate, Ukrainegate, or whatever, going back to Watergate with the former president back in I think it was in the 60s. How that was the most egregious thing that could have happened, that he was spying on his political opponent and then he had to resign because of it. Obama was caught spying on his political opponent. Hillary Clinton made up a fake dossier about Russia, collusion with Trump, and it was brought out into the public during the trial. Biden was caught, with with Burisma, with his son, on the dealings with that. He was caught with, federal documents that Trump was, charged with recently. He was caught with that, but then he was labeled too incompetent to go ahead and stand trial because he didn't have presidential immunity in order to take classified documents from the White House to his own house, which he got caught doing, and they didn't try him on that. It's like, there's a bunch of gates happening all over the fucking place. Ain't nobody getting arrested except they're trying to arrest Trump right now. They have him on a bunch of stupid shit. It's so crazy that we're tuning it to gate, which has, Watergate has no freaking weight or, no bearing on the incredible amount of corrupt shit that's happening now. It's insane.
And their loved ones who continue to grieve to this day. This is personal for me, as I know it is for so many of you here. This is real. It's not just words. I first deployed to Iraq in 2005 with the Hawaii Army National Guard as a member of Charlie Med.
I don't know what that is.
As those of you who were deployed during that time know, it was the height of the war, and sadly, we took many casualties. And every day we were confronted with that high human cost of war and that sadness as we boarded the plane when we left, that we were leaving some of our brothers and sisters behind, only to lose others when we got home to suicide. So I mean what I say when I share with you that I know that President Trump understands the grave responsibility that a president and commander-in-chief bears for every single one of our lives. Whether you're a soldier, you're an airman, a Marine, sailor, or a coastie, he keeps us in his heart in the decisions that he makes. We saw this through his first term in the presidency, when he not only didn't start any new wars, he took action to de-escalate and prevent wars. He exercised.
And isn't it so crazy that a lot of soldiers don't get the mental help that they need? And I think, like, therapy for me, anyway, I think is a complete waste of time in most senses. But I think if, like, what gets everybody down to the point that they want to self-delete, I think is isolation. They isolate themselves. They put themselves away from the family, friends, everybody else because of what they're dealing with, and they don't think anybody can understand. And self-isolation, I think, is the biggest, like A to B to, like, those thoughts of self-deletion. So I think more programs need to be to where, like, it gets those guys out of their, hermit crab and go out and, experience life more, the joys of life, or, the opportunities of life, I should say.
Exercise the courage that we expect from our commander-in-chief in exhausting all measures of diplomacy, having the courage to meet with adversaries, dictators, allies, and partners alike in the pursuit of peace, seeing war as a last resort. The truth is, as we head towards our decision as a country in November, the same cannot be said about Kamala Harris. In fact, the opposite is true, and we're living through this reality today as this administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts and regions around the world, and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before.
That is incredibly true. If you haven't seen the news yet about the war in Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine just committed a counteroffensive against Russia and then went ahead and invaded, was it Kursk? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but like, it's all over the news. Oh, Ukraine caught Russia flat-footed, and they invaded Kursk, and, like, they're having some success there, and so they're actually invading Russia. And I'm like, that is a bad fucking move. The whole reason that Putin invaded Ukraine in the first place is because there was talks of Ukraine joining NATO. He didn't want NATO that close to his land. There was reports of United States putting some questionable shit in Ukraine, military type stuff, and so that's why Russia finally was like, the Crimea thing, we're gonna leave it at that, but now you're starting up again, so we're gonna have to go ahead and go even further. We're not gonna let you try to isolate us from the world and surround us and shit. And so that is theorized on why Putin did the way he did what he did, and this move to go ahead and go into Kursk and try to take it over and maybe even expand outwards even more. Fuck it. Like, we are so close to the spark of nuclear war right now. It's fucking scary, man. Super scary.
This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its political opponents and undermining our civil liberties, weaponizing our very institutions against those they deem as a threat.
And that's true because just not recently, but a few months ago, the Biden administration, DOJ, labeled parents as potential domestic terrorists for going against the EOD, the education. No, what is it? Is it EOD or EDA or something like that? The Department of Education, DOE. Yeah, the Department of Education, on banning like transgender books and books about sexualization, all the way from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade or something like that. And they didn't want teachers teaching their kids about transgenderism and gayism and the LGBTQ plus community and shit like that. They were like, no, they're there to learn basic skills and basic things to help perpetuate society forward. And the parents were not for this, and they kept having parent-teacher conferences where they're showing up, giving their grievances, saying what they didn't like, what they did like. And so the DOJ finally came out and was like, no, 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 no. We like this, what the DOE is doing. You cannot disrupt it. You guys are getting out of control with all of your, grievances and how you don't like it. So we're going to label you as domestic terrorists, all the parents that were going up against it. So yeah, they are definitely weaponizing the Department of Justice against the American citizens. Definitely.
Kamala Harris has done this over the last 3.5 years. She won't hesitate to continue that if she is elected as president. President Trump has been their first and foremost target in this because they don't want us as voters to even have the option to vote for him. I've been their most recent target, added to a secret domestic terror watch list after exposing the truth about what kind of dangers we would face if Kamala Harris is elected as president.
I'm probably going to be on there.
We as Americans must stand
now.
together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. We can't allow our country to be destroyed by politicians who will put their own power ahead of the interests of the American people, our freedom, and our future.
There was a little hesitancy in the clap there. But at least she didn't come out like Schumer and say, you can clap now. Or Biden's like, clap, you stupid bastards.
I am proud to stand here before you today, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. If you love our country, as I do, if you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump and send him back to the White House to do the tough work of saving our country and serving the people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
That was the whole speech. I think this is huge. Anybody else that's like, for the MAGA party and like, Trump and everything like that, and anybody that thinks strategically, I think this is pretty big too, because anybody that's, iffy about Trump, not really keen on some of his policies or anything, the whole idea of unity of the rivals is definitely a good one to go on, because that brings in all the moderates as well. Like saying, hey, it's too vitriol right now. Both sides hate each other. We need to go ahead and come together and, at least come to a common denominator on what is like, the goals of what we want to see. It's only about how to get there that we have arguments about. I think him bringing in Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, if he brings in Vivek, if he brings in even what's that woman's name out of Arizona? What's her name? Not Carrie Lake, but the other one. I forget her name, but she was like going up against Trump for a long ass time as the Republican nominee, and then she finally bowed out at the very end. I forget her name, and everybody hates her now. But even if he were to bring her in, I would think that would be a good thing too. She might be a spy, who knows, for the Democrat Party, but it would definitely be an olive branch to the other side, being like, at least I'm willing to come to the table, even though you are really trying not to. So I think that's a good thing overall. I think he's smart enough to know like who's with him and against him. Okay, let's go and take a look at some of the public's notions of what they believe RFK's dropping out. RFK Jr. just dropped out. It's so over, bro. It's so effing over. El Capaccio. Gizmodo, is that a publication? RFK has dropped out of the race, but will always have the brain worms. That's pretty fucked up. Let's see. Hawker Comp. RFK Jr. drops out, and who cares? Oh, I'm guessing it's from this publication right here. Oh, MSNBC? Yeah, I would assume so. They don't want to make it such a big thing. Like, nobody's going to care. He didn't have that much pull in the first place. But even the small amount of pull that he did have is going to be enough. In the swing states, anyway. Here we got another lefty. Christopher on the left. Give himself away. Me laughing in the faces of everyone still capping for this clown as a choice. Well, it's not about him being a choice anymore, dude. It's about him giving his support and his blessing for his constituents, the few that he had, mind you, still a percentage is going to go towards Trump now. You should be very worried on the left. Why is this news? Before it's news, pure speculation. Needs RFK Jr. speaks amid speculation he'll drop off the 2024 race. Well, it's not speculation anymore. RFK Jr. to drop out of presidential race by the end of the week. We already know that. I know supporters of RFK Jr. will be disappointed, but I bet he will drop out likely soon. This admission is more of an announcement, just floating something like this places real doubt in success. Very few will vote for him just to get 5% of the vote, and that is whatever. But again, it's going to be huge in terms of getting Trump in there. The kind of thing that makes you think twice about having kids. That's how fugly. Miss Dobalina. She's probably one of those, older cat ladies that believed into the feminism lie and is now childless, husbandless, and is regretting life. Has anybody seen that post here on X where it shows a woman? She's like in a low-cut dress, and on there it says, "I'm 42, childless, braless, pantyless, and I'm out here partying in Atlanta." And she's like kind of dancing around towards the camera and then goes into it. That is a sad lady. I tell you that right now, dude. She is crying herself to sleep every freaking night. Every night. Aaron Everett, I feel badly the decision by RFK has come with such a high cost. His family is publicly admonishing him for his decision, as they did at each step of the way during his independent and Democratic primary runs. They say he's nothing like his father. Put his career probably first. If JFK was alive right now, he'd probably be a mega supporter. Or at least even more on the Republican side, because the Republican side is more akin to what the Democrat side was back in the 70s when JFK was around. Well, that might have been before that. But yeah, I think he would be more akin to the Republican side as it is at the moment. If RFK Jr. really ends his campaign to endorse Trump, it's going to go down as the biggest, most spineless bitch move in political history. His father and uncle would be absolutely effing disgusted. There's a reason the entire family thinks he's an effing lunatic and cut him off. No, I don't think his dad and brother would go ahead and think of him as a spineless coward. I think they would look at the Democratic Party as it is now and be disgusted by them and totally support his role in what he's doing, because he doesn't really have a clear cut to the White House. Like he said, the only way he could have, if there was a huge contention within, the Republican and Democrats of those two nominees, and they both didn't get to 270, then he would have a way to the White House, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Trump's going to win, especially with his endorsement and Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, it's a total given now. I think he's thinking about his own path forward into the future, and he does want a place within Trump's administration coming up. Well, that will certainly cement his legacy as an asshole. Oh man, people are pissed. Yeah, they're pissed because they know what it's going to do. They are sweating ball sacks right now. They're sweating crazy. Oh wow, from Finn Semi Hiatus. Oh wow, RFK Jr. dropped out of the race and endorsed Trump. Wow, who would have seen this coming? It was actually pretty surprising. I didn't think I didn't even give two thoughts to RFK Jr. up until this point. So yeah, this was a huge gut punch in terms of being surprised. Roger Mayhem, remember when RFK Jr. supporters said that things like, "We need to fight against the Uniparty"? His decision to drop out is very disrespectful to his donors and volunteers. They won't complain though, as it turns out even independents are just as unprincipled as those they probably condemned. Well, Democrats, you can't say shit, man. Your party pretty much upended your own votes because you all voted for Biden, and they said, throw that out the fucking window. We don't care. We're installing Harris because Biden clearly can't win. And y'all were like, okay, yeah, we trust your judgment. Go for it. I don't care what you do. Yeah, you guys can't say shit. Your democracy is dead. Zena Gill. According to some other excited people, RFK Jr. was about to become the next president of the United States of America, but he dropped out himself from the presidential race today and endorsed Donald Trump. That is what happened. Liz Harvey, I don't think it's good RFK Jr. is dropping out, actually. Well, if you're on the side of the Democrats, then yeah, you have a reason to not like it. Let's do a few more. Lee, Kerry Kennedy. I am sharing a personal statement that my family and I have made in response to my brother's announcement. Okay, yeah, Kerry Kennedy. It's a total lefty. And let's see what she has to say. I think I read this earlier, but let's just read it again. Statement on RFK Jr.'s announcement today. We want an American filled with hope and bound together by a shared vision of a brighter future, a future defined by individual freedom, economic promise, and national pride. We believe in Harris and Walsh. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It is a sad ending to a sad story. This was, approved by Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, Courtney Kennedy, Kerry Kennedy, Chris Kennedy, and Rory Kennedy. Well, all of you leftist Kennedy hicks, unfortunately, are either you're dim-witted, you have no critical thinking skills, or you're all for, you're all on the bandwagon. I don't care. Vote blue no matter who. I'm guessing you're all on that train. And that is a bad train to be on. You guys should run for your lives. Okay, he was either using Okay, so this is just one of those baseless accusations that people make. EPC Ramos, he was either using his campaign to use voters as collateral to whoever would give him an administration position, or was financed by pro-Trump folk to take away votes from left, but ended up taking more votes from the Trump. I mean, who knows? No data has come out about that yet. Believe me, if the Democrat Party had any inkling that this was true, you best believe that they would have ran that story already. They might have already ran it with no information whatsoever, because they've done that multiple times already, coming out with shit that they have no actual evidence on and just speculating the shit out of it. They did it with Russia. They did it with the Hunter Biden laptop, with the 51 FBI officials saying that it was Russia disinformation, which was total bullshit, and that's proven, by the way. The cocaine in the White House, the whole debacle with July 13th and the assassination on Trump. They're coming out with bullshit on that, and they can't even get their timeline together. They're having pregnant women watch Trump. What the hell? Or recently pregnant women watching Trump and giving them breaks to feed their offspring? The hell is that? Yeah, the other side is totally falling apart. All right, let's get to the end of this. Okay, so here's another hater, Matt, with the freaking rainbow flags. We need to bring back the rainbow, dude. Forget all these LGBT plus people. The rainbow is for kids, all right? It's not for your asses. Okay, I'm not associating with you guys anymore. That just lets me know that you like kids. As a grown man, it's creepy. Laugh aloud. I love that RFK Jr. announced that he was dropping out today and supporting Trump, and literally nobody gives an F, and just kept talking about the Democrats and Harris. Well, nobody gave an F on your side, so you're living within a bubble, buddy. You're living within a bubble. Get out of your echo chamber and look at the other side, and you're going to see that it's definitely making a difference. All right, let's read this one more. But it didn't matter. RFK Jr. is dropping out on Friday after the DNC is over. Early mid-September, his polls are dropping and will continue to drop as undeciders pick a side. Not even get to 5% at this rate. Was over 10% not long ago. Under 5% means it was all for nothing. Hey, man, if even 1% goes to the other side and everybody else just doesn't vote, that's 1% their side. And if their margins are razor thin, as the polls are indicating at the moment, then yeah, that gives a total leg up to the ones that they do choose, which is most likely going to be Trump. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and go back to the main screen. All right, thank you everybody for watching today, and if you stuck around, thank you for that. Go ahead and like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, so every time I go live again, you will be notified and will not miss out. All right, I do have a channel over there on YouTube, which you're probably on, and I do some reactions here and there of some shows that I like, so you can tune into that. But I do like this political stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and keep doing it. So anybody that likes it, go ahead and tune in again, and I'd be very appreciative. All right, with all that being said, have a good night, have a good week, and try not to get stressed out. See ya.